Welcome to the Crawler and Mage D&D podcast. I'm Crawler.
And I'm Mage.
Today we're going to talk about low tier play. We're going to talk about the Blood Hunter, the Monk, the Ranger, the Warlock, and the Artificer. Those are what we consider low tier. We know that some people's favorite classes, but they have the biggest holes in them, is what I would say. I think I'm rather positive about D&D as a whole. I give it like a B plus average. The fact that you can play so many game systems with it. It has a lot of pros and cons, very customizable. I think it's way better than the last 20 years of D&D, realistically. I guess 3.5 is pretty good, but it took a while to get there. So what do you give it for a grade, Mitch?
I'd give D&D an A from an F to A score, because I think D&D is only as good or can be as good as long as you have a good enough DM and players.
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah, I think it's
as good as your group is, basically. That's my theorem with D&D.
No, that honestly, group matters. It's the easiest to understand too, though. I think that's where I stand with. So we're gonna start with the Monk.
Monk.
What are your pros on the Monk?
Cue the crickets.
Gotcha. So is it realistically like just your least favorite, probably? Like conceptually speaking.
I mean, it's interesting, like, conceptually, like, a lot of their abilities have really cool roleplay, like, being able to catch missiles and whatnot, like,
yeah.
Like, their abilities thematically are really interesting, but that's about the most I can say about them.
No, I agree. So, my short list is self-healing, the fact that Dex is probably the most important stat in D&D, because everything's attached to Dex, mainly combat-related, but jumping around, trying not to fall, dodging shit, initiative. It's all Dex-based.
So. Stealth is definitely another important thing.
Stealth, right? It's crucial. Also, Monk at low tiers, you have the coolest flavor in like multi-attack, and you get multi-attack too. But Furry on blows, like it's just cool. It's just it sucks. That's kind of the problem.
Yeah, low levels Monk is definitely one of the more powerful classes. But as we'll segue into, it definitely falls off into the later stages of leveling.
Yeah, I agree. Even though, actually, throw this out there, the Astro Monk, that one's okay. But the fact that I have to point a very specific one and be like, that one's okay, that kind of says what it is. So what are your cons on the Monk?
Key points. Not a very good mechanic.
Yeah, it's just a mess. Cool name.
Yeah.
You just don't have enough of them.
Yeah, key points are a very cool mechanic, but just way too many of your abilities are reliant on them, and you're not given enough, at least not without going into magic items and whatnot, which you should never have to go into magic items to fix a class.
Of course. Yeah, you're too short rest dependent.
And to give another example of a class that I think kind of does the resource game better is Sorcerer, because Sorcerer does have a limited resource pool that only comes back on, I think it's either long or short rests.
You can get some of it on short rest, I believe, too, yeah.
Yeah, basically, Sorcerer also has the same mechanic of having a resource they can pull from to make their things more powerful. However, the Sorcerer isn't dependent on them. Like, if a Sorcerer runs out of points, it's not the end of the world for them, and they have a way to regain points at any time in exchange for sacrificing a little bit of their spell slots.
Okay, so my only problem with that sentiment, the Sorcerers are glass cannon. At least the Monk, your Dex improves your AC. That's my only... I agree with what you're saying, like...
But also, the Sorcerer isn't meant to be a melee combatant, while the Monk is. That's a little bit of a...
No. I agree. No, but like you said, if you run out of stuff, what are you both? One of them can still take care of themselves, and one of them is the Sorcerer. Now, again, I think the Sorcerer is way better, but... if you just didn't have any spells, the Monk can run away better. At least he can run away better, you know?
I agree with that, although I don't think saying that Sorcerer is dead without their spell slots or dead without their points is entirely fair, because they can interchange both of them. So if one can change, basically they can add their key point of the sorcery points and making more spell slots, etc.
No, of course, and frankly, you're a charisma person, which means you might be able to talk your way out of some situation.
Yeah, charisma caster, best caster.
Right, and you're probably further away in combat, which means you have a head start, which also... I'm not completely, negating what you're saying, but if you're caught, the sorcerer is fucked.
Yeah.
Like, that's my only thing.
We're getting horribly off track here.
Well, no. I think it's important though, because they do conceptually like that the monk and the sorcerer share the same like build, just one's magical and one's martial.
Yeah.
I think that's a good comparison though.
Yeah. What else do we have for the monk?
Well, so the monk does lack like good proficiency.
Yeah.
And they should be more
flexible class.
Yeah, they should be tankier too. Just like Dex doesn't make you tanky, but it should. Like, or I don't know, add some more to your AC. The monk just needs a lot. I think that's, in my opinion, from the base rule book, the monk is just the worst.
Yeah, and even though the monk has their second stat is supposed to be wisdom, they don't really use it for anything besides unarmored defense at level 1.
Well, survival is a pretty important skill.
Is it
tracking
a very important skill? That being said, I've never seen it be used except like 3 times in like the 2-year long campaigns I've been in.
But do you do a lot of wilderness stuff?
Oh yeah, a hell a lot of it.
Interesting. Yeah. That I would just say that's maybe a little bit player problem then. Players should be asking a little bit more questions.
Yeah. But I think if they also made them do more stuff with their wisdom, so that way now there's 2 stats that you gotta think, oh, do I want to focus more on my dexterity to improve my combat, or do I focus more on my wisdom so I can use like these features that are based on wisdom more, things like that.
Yeah, we'll have to talk about this more in the future. I think D&D should find a way to like balance how many stats you need for your class to be good. I think that's the main problem with some of the classes anyways. Like if you had a monk and especially if you roll for stats, if you just rolled super high monk stats, of course you're good, but that's the problem, right? So just throwing that out there. So what are your cons on the ranger?
Cons on the ranger. Realistically, the ranger gets in my opinion, the ranger gets outclassed by 3 other classes. They basically just do parts of what it does, but so much better.
Yeah.
Like in the form of archery, it gets outclassed by the rogue and it gets outclassed by the fighter. And in terms of its ability to use summons and its magic and whatnot, it gets outclassed by the druid.
Yeah, we basically talked about this in the last episode, but the ranger, the coolest thing it has is companion.
And the druid kind of already does that.
No, the warlock does companions. Well, I guess companions and summons are a little different, but yeah. We're talking negative first. I just don't think they have enough cool class abilities. They're not the best ranger, even though ranger's in their name. And they just they're missing something. Now they have been buffed of late, but I still don't think. Again, the fighter's just better version, and then like me and you both agree on this, but the rogue is just a better fighter most of the time too. So
yeah.
Do you have any pros on the ranger?
Well, actually, I had one more thing to say about the cons of the ranger.
And
that is that the base class features are like insanely laughable because of how niche they are. Because picking a favorite enemy, great. It sounds like a great thing for a thematic, ranger, hunter, whatever. Only issue though, you don't encounter any of your favorite enemy. Now what?
Well, that is a problem.
Your favorite enemy, then you don't really get too many bonuses when you do fight your favorite enemy until later in the game.
Right, but talk to your DM. But what it does do to the DM is I think at max level you get to pick like 3 or 4. That means for me to make your character as interesting as possible, I have to use those 3 or 4 targets. That maybe not the campaign we're doing. Now, if we're doing an apocalypse campaign, of course, zombies and shit. Or we're doing Dragon Hunter campaign, of course, very niche situation, super cool, but it's too vague. It's too not helpful.
Yeah. And the subclasses are a little bit better, but as you said, the more recent subclasses have definitely made the class a lot better. Just don't worry about the older ones. Just they're incredibly outdated.
Yeah. Have you looked into the play tested stuff for 1D&D?
I have not been paying attention to the playtest stuff.
So did move Hunter's Mark as a skill ability. So that was pretty good. Now you just have it. That's going to help. I don't know. I think they're going to do pretty good at balancing in 1D&D again, which is why we're kind of having these discussions. So that's positive. You have any more cons?
Half casters in general are just kind of weird, and ranger's kind of the worst out of the half casters. That's what I'd say.
And it has shit magic. Yeah, I agree.
Half casters in general are just kind of a jack of all trades, a master of none, and ranger's kind of the here's how you don't do a jack of all trades type character.
Yeah, that's pretty well put, honestly. Yeah, it's they're not good. They're not good enough magic, or on the scale of magic and martial, they're not. You can't push either side too well. So you're stuck in the middle, and the middle's not good enough. Now, if you could make a really cool martial ranger, if they were better at making like a badass martial ranger with a little bit of magic, that'd be cool. Or a really cool magic ranger with a little bit of martial, that would also be cool.
Yeah.
The problem is you can't really do that.
You can't really hard lean into either, so it leaves you kind of this weird like angsty teen sort of phase where you're just kind of stuck between both.
Awkward in the middle. Yep. Any more cons then?
That was realistically all I had to say.
Okay. So what are your pros?
They're just cool as fuck.
They are cool, huh? That does. But is that they're cool, or that like Link and a bunch of ranger looking stuff come to mind?
Honestly, it's not really that, and also those characters I'd more consider like rogues, but that's a different topic for another day. Yeah, hunters and like rogues and just hunters, rangers, and just like all those other like types of like ranger like characters are just really cool in general.
Yeah. Well, the fact that you're a person with a sword, a bow, a little bit of armor, and a pet, come on, that's awesome. Like, the problem is, it's just not very good.
Yeah.
But they have a bunch
of what you expect your character to be and the way your character actually is just don't stack up.
Yeah, so their hit die is pretty good. Their armor, weapons are all right. The companion's cool. Their support magic's cool. There's just not enough of it. It's just not complete.
They're not bad at anything per se, but they're definitely not good at anything.
Yeah, I completely agree.
What are your pros for the ranger?
I pretty much just laid them up. Realistically, the fact that they have a little of everything means that you can fit in anywhere. Like, if you're in your zero session, everybody picks everything that they want to be, and you realize, well, we could use a little of this and a little of that. A ranger is a good, like, last picked role. Not that we draft roles or anything, but it's a good role that, like, can, again, have magic, damage, tank, weapon, all of it. Companion. You can do everything, just not very well. Consider that. Well, and again, they're another. What are they? I guess they're another Dex Wisdom. Maybe that's what we're realizing. That's why they're at the bottom. But I guess again, you can build up your charisma, but of course, you don't want to dump con. It's nice that you don't need strength, but I don't know. I should be able to. I think D&D. That's the thing D&D needs to work on. Anybody who uses like Dex or Strength should be your primary. You should be able to like move things around. I don't know.
Yeah,
but that's a whole other conversation. Again, conceptually speaking, they're awesome. But again, D&D is awesome. So it's what are you gonna do? Anything else about the Ranger as a whole?
That's really all I had to say for the Ranger. Yeah.
What are your pros on Warlock?
So my pros for the Warlock that I can't speak today.
Eldritch Blast.
Yeah, I really like Eldritch Blast and the fact that it's a customizable spell based on your invocation choices. I think it's a really unique and interesting mechanic. To have a spell that you can basically tailor based on the player.
Yeah.
That's really cool. The lore behind the Warlock, making packs and deals different patrons. At first, it seems really limiting, but once you think about it more and you get more creative with it, you can do a lot with it.
So, I completely agree with what you're saying there. I think the Warlock is by far the coolest roleplay potential. Like, the fact that I can make a deal with a goddamn devil, and he can just talk to me and blah, 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 or I can have a genie. Like, having that through line with your DM to, like, talk to the world is just awesome. And Eldritch Blast, but...
The Warlock's patron definitely allows for just a natural built-in, hey, we need a plot hook, here we go.
Yeah, and charisma. That would be my other. Those are my big three things.
Charisma casters are really good. In my opinion,
Yeah.
we have too many of them, but
Yeah, you know what I think? Because I think we talked about this last episode too, but the sorcerer should be moved to a con caster. It
yeah.
would move things around a little bit, but we'll get there too.
Yeah, I guess that one's good for the sorcerer.
The warlock, also, I think I just love about them. Conceptually speaking, they would make cool looking or cool acting necromancy, and everybody likes to just have a bunch of skeletons and shit. Like it's just fun. So they seem fun. The problem is they're just weak they're just weak.
Yeah, of all the
Really.
spellcasters, they're just kind of the weakest, and that's mainly because of how little spell slots they get.
Yeah.
The thing is, their
So
invocations are really powerful, but they do not make up for your low spell slots, and your ability to get your spell slots back on a short rest just still doesn't outweigh the fact that you have so little spell slots.
yeah. Well, so what are your cons?
Well, that basically was my con.
Okay, fair enough. So my cons are glass cannon, but they're not canon enough. Obviously the spells. They're the worst caster by far, so we completely agree with everything there. You can't do anything solo. You're essentially useless. Like, getting like the Raven Queen, getting a Raven, you can do some stealth, okay, looking through them eyes, but your body's defenseless. You just can be killed. Like,
Yeah.
it's cool. It's just not. And I know D&D is a team game, of course. And most metagaming, we all agree, don't split the party unless you have to. But come on, you should be able to I should be able to walk out the door and not get my ass beat, you know?
And also things like Hexblade Warlock, congrats, you are now just a ranger.
Yeah, it's true. But it's funny because but the ranger's not good either, so it doesn't.
Yeah.
It's cool. You're just another bad class. What are you gonna do though?
Well, that being said, Hexblade is definitely my favorite out of all the Warlock subclasses.
Oh, my favorite's the genie one, just because I think having a lamp is awesome. But again, thematically they're incredible. Like that's you can't. No one can argue that. But have you played a warlock?
I've not played one, but I've made a ton of them because I've wanted to play them. But I'll usually just find some other class or build. I'll just be like, ooh, actually, I want to play this more.
Yeah, that's true. So in my games, one of my close friends, he played a warlock for the first time we ever played. He made a Raven Queen warlock, nailed it. We never played D&D before, or I hadn't played in like 8 years or a few. I haven't played in, doesn't matter. I hadn't played in a while, and he nailed it. It was super fun. So when me relearning for me learning to DM, it was cool having a guy with a Raven. He was talking to the Raven Queen would have the occasional thing for him to do. It was fun to make that stuff with him. And I sucked as a DM at the time, but it was still fun. Any other pros or cons about the Warlock?
Honestly, Warlock is just too cantrip focused, but that basically just ties into what I previously said.
Yeah, Eldritch Blast, but yeah, it's but all agreed.
Yeah, you can nuke one target, and then you basically just do the exact same thing every single turn.
Yeah, I guess another con of mine would be if you're a shy human that you have to talk to your DM so much to really get the best out of that class. Yeah. It's not newbie friendly, essentially. Even though I just said some positive things about it was fun.
Yeah, the Warlock
but that's
is
because
not for newer players, just because the low resources, how much roleplay you'd have to do with your DM, and just like how much you'd have to think about things.
Yeah. I just contradicted myself though, because like I had fun watching someone play a warlock, but that's because me and that person were close and we could figure it out. But if you don't have that, I could see why it just wouldn't be fun. Yeah, that's my final thought there. Okay, so what are your cons about the Artificer?
Artificer. So my cons for the Artificer, it's very, how do I say? It's very setting dependent.
Agreed. Agreed.
Very difficult to work into a lot of settings without an extreme amount of communication, haggling, and homebrew. Which, if you have to resort to homebrew in order to make a class fit into a setting, you're already off to a bad start.
No, I mean, I 100% agree there. So, That is my biggest critique with the Artificer. It doesn't fit, and again, that's probably because my mindset is Lord of the Rings when I think D&D.
Yeah.
But I think that's a lot of people's D&D. So,
They definitely can still make an Artificer work if you like talk about it. Like, I'm playing an Artificer right now, and like me and you have talked about it a lot and like made a lot of sense out of it. We've made it really cool. Like, I'm a crystal artificer. Like, Artificer uses magic crystals instead of building machines and whatnot. And it's really cool.
yeah, we're actually going to start tomorrow, which is cool. So we're going to work that in. So we'll probably end up updating people as we record these about as we do them. But
Yeah.
tomorrow you're going to school. So, we'll see how that goes.
Yay!
Don't you miss going to being in school?
No, I also have to go to school IRL tomorrow.
Yeah, that's actually kind of funny too, huh? So my main cons are they're not tanky enough for what they are. You're covered in like gear and equipment and stuff. Like they should be a tanky spellcaster. And I think frankly, it's really hard to hard focus. Get similar to the ranger, you're not good enough magically or martially. You can't push either one in a really far direction. Now, of course, magic items, this and that, but that's yep.
Yeah, sorry, but I kind of disagree with that thing that you can't push magic or martial because thanks to the subclasses, you can definitely push martial very easily. However, pushing magic just isn't really an option with any of the subclasses.
No, agreed, but you're still worse than the barbarian, the fighter, and everyone above them. Like, martially, they don't compare to those other classes.
I mean, I think around the mid to low tier, they compare very well with them. But around the higher tier, they're definitely more similar to the ranger, where they're a little bit good at everything, but not a master of anything.
No, I can agree with that, though, but that's kind of the point, though. At no point can they even sniff like high tier, I guess but you probably worded it better than I did there.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure the class we were very divided on, because I'm pretty sure I put this one within my top 5. It's been a while.
Where did Artificer for you? It was 7, so I actually had it. I must have had it really low for it to drop this far. I had it. Yeah, I had it as my second worst. So, yeah, that's it. It's my fault it's this low on the list. But,
yeah, I just have a lot more positive
not really
about it because I think it's really interesting.
Wait, 14, 13. I mean, it only dropped 2 spots for you. You had it 7, and it went down to 9. So it didn't. Again, it's almost mid tier. I just think the custom. Well, so this is actually where it's funny. The customization. I'm going to talk about a pro here. Is also a really cool thing. It's just really hard to pull off. That's I think the problem. Now, again, you're about to customize. You're going to flavor text it. You're not going to change anything.
I'm not necessarily changing anything like ruling wise besides like changing from Smith's tools to jewel crafting tools.
Yeah.
But besides that, it's mostly just flavor texting is what I'm doing.
Yeah. So we about to talk about the pros here. It can be really steampunk, which is fucking sweet.
Yeah, I feel like it can definitely fit more than just steampunk, but that requires a lot of effort because it's inherently meant to be steampunk.
Now I also, oh man, what's that? Oh, what's that Disney pirate flying stuff?
Peter Pan?
No, close, but no. Treasure Planet.
Treasure Planet, yeah. I was just about to say
right that. Now that is also a lot of people's D&D. Treasure Planet.
Yeah,
there's magic and fantasy. Sure, Peter Pan kind of vibes too, but so the Artificer fits in that kind of campaign super well. There's blimps and there's like teleportation and one-armed people. Like that's sick. Like it can in the right campaign just be the coolest theme,
Yeah.
I have pretty positive things to say about the Artificer overall. Yeah. I just think that again, stats wise, skill wise, it just can't get to the upper tier. It just can't compete. Mostly in battle, and everything's cool conceptually. So what are you gonna do?
Yeah.
Some more of my pros. It can be tanky It's not super tanky, but it's tanky and a little damage and a little magic. Pretty sweet. But the free magic item, that's the best
Uh-huh.
part. Like when you don't have to have a discussion with your DM on magic items to an extent, of course, you should always talk to your DM. Again, I'm a DM. I'll take all the I'll customize the dip, like everything. I don't care. Someone goes, "Hey, I need this," but it only gave me that. My answer is yes. I don't really. If you decide to like break the class for some reason, in my book, you're just gonna pull away from your fun. So
Yeah.
that's the way I've kind of always looked at it. So what are your pros? What are or do you have any more specific pros?
Oh yes, but also I had one more thing that you just reminded me of about cons that I had.
Okay.
The one other con that I did have for the Artificer is that the magic items, their ability to create magic items, can be a bit of a challenge as a DM, or at least a newer DM, because magic items in D&D are a little bit problematic at times because they can spike the power level of a character or party, making things like CR a little bit more unreliable than it already is.
Yeah, the problem is the CR chart, but yeah.
Yeah, CR chart is already a bit wonky as it is, but magic items make that worse. And artificers being able to basically make any amount, basically being able to choose whatever magic items they want and then make them after any long rest and immediately attune to them can make them a bit of a problem as a newer DM.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree there. Magic items, I guess, so maybe they are strong, but it's also like a strong that's awkward. Also, again, my main problem with them too is late game. I don't think they are very good because you may start off with magic items, but eventually everybody has magic items. Now what?
Well, to be fair, the artificer does kind of remedy that a bit by like being able to attune to more items, and as they level up, their ability, like their magic items, like their enhanced weapon, which at like second level or whatever, it gives them +1 weapon. Once you reach certain like level milestones, like 6, 11, etc., it becomes +2 weapons. You can create them +3 weapons, and you have
True.
like extra infusions that like only get unlocked to, like level 18 and whatnot, and they're like really powerful.
Yeah. They're a really good support class.
Oh yeah, they can be a good support or like a like medium tank. Like if you don't have a tank, then Artificer can definitely fill that role. If you don't have a magic person, Artificer can definitely fill that role.
Yeah, we got mostly positive things to say about them. So realistically, from this point forward, most things are positive.
Yeah, most things are positive from here, except for one or two that we may have had a mild disagreement on.
Yeah, I know the rogue's terrible. I agree.
Are we gonna fight? Anyways, I did have the pros. I did have other pros for.
Oh, of course. What pros do you got?
So I actually kind of contrary or in tandem with what I just said as a con for a pro. I think having a class that focuses on magic items, being able to create magic items and attune to magic items, and be able to just focus on magic items is really interesting, and I really like that. I think it's a fun, unique mechanic that really only the Artificer can do. So it makes the Artificer really unique.
So what makes me laugh, I just did the same exact thing the other way, where weirdly their pros are their cons, but their cons are their pros. They're a mess.
Strength is their own weakness, and it's kind of
But the cool thing is they're cool.
Yeah.
So, but that's a D&D is cool. We're back to that same. We're back at the same part where they're cool. They're just not cool enough.
Yeah.
Right, to really stand out.
And because both of us are saying that basically both of our cons are also our pros, I feel like it's kind of a testament to how, like we said earlier in the intro with D&D as a whole, the Artificer is as cool and awesome and interesting as the players that are playing it and playing with it.
Yep, true.
If you have an awesome group like players, DMs, and you work together, the Artificer can be incredible, and you can do literally anything with it if you just think about it and change it up a bit and do whatever. Last pro for the Artificer is that subclasses. I honestly think the subclasses are pretty cool, and I kind of wish we had more of them, although I kind of know why we don't have more of them, because they're a newer class.
Is there only 4?
Yes, there are only 4 subclasses, which I think is a real shame, because there's like 10, 12 different tools, and there's only 4 subclasses, each with their own unique tool. Like, I wish we had more subclasses based on like woodcarver's tools and jewel crafting tools and whatnot.
Yeah, or at least examples on how to convert them.
Yeah.
So I hope in 1D&D that the Artificer is not an expansion. put it in the base rules so that it gets the same love as everything else.
Yeah, put in the base rules and then just give it more subclasses, honestly.
Yeah, well, that's the case, right? Because it didn't come in until I think the second book in 5e, so it's a second thought to a lot of people, and I think that's its biggest weakness. It also, yeah, it just doesn't get enough love. The problem is all D&D. This is just a D&D problem. Actually, it's one of my few. D&D, to make money, they need to release more stuff, and the stuff has to be better than the old stuff. So if you're not constantly getting a new subclass, your base stuff is only going to get worse. And because they don't exactly get upgraded, their old stuff doesn't compare to the newer shiny stuff the other classes are getting. I think that is actually their main. They just don't get the love.
Yeah, although that's a problem with pretty much everything, not just D&D, but pretty much just everything with gaming, with TV, anything in life is just everything always needs to be better because otherwise there's no incentive to get the new thing.
Yep.
Yeah, it's just every game pretty much power creep in some way.
Yeah, and D&D falls into it hard, though. But again, it's 8 years.
Getting new versions every, 10, 20 years or whatever.
Weirdly, I don't know. I just know that the last one is good. It's going to be 10 years from the start of 5e, and I hate that. Just call the next one 6e, but that's a whole other thing. But it's basically be 10 years.
Edition or whatever it is.
Because it's not a new edition, it's a modified this edition.
Which should just be a new edition.
Well, it should be 5.5. I either want them to call it 5.5 or 6th edition.
Yeah.
Because is it 5e but fixed, then it's 5.5, or is it new, then it's 6th edition? I like the system they have. It's easy to fucking research. If I type in 1 D&D down the road, you're gonna end up getting old school D&D or OG D&D.
You're gonna mean first D&D 1e,
right? Because there are people who label that 1e. Now, technically, you shouldn't have to label the first edition, but whatever. But people do. So whatever. So for low tier play or low tier classes, sorry, is there any more just notes you have about it?
My closing statement on all the low tier classes is just that all of them are okay at least, and all of them can be played well. It's just that as they stand on their own, completely ignoring how players play, DMs play, etc., they're just the worst case option, or they get outclassed, etc.
Yeah, no, I mean 100%. I agree. I think that everything has a silver liner. They're on the bottom. Something has to be on the bottom.
Mm-hmm. Thank you guys for listening in. If you enjoy this content, leave a like, subscribe, share the channel with friends. If you want to check out me more, you can search me up on YouTube, Mage Dnd. I usually do streams on the weekends. And if you want to check out more of Crawler, you can find them on Twitch. They stream a lot during the week, sometimes on the weekends. Got Yu-Gi-Oh! Sunday if you like that stuff. And that's about it. Thank you guys for listening. Hey, wait a minute. Did we forget something?